Hello, Internet, and welcome to Ship of the Week, a show where I take your suggestions and try to build them in under an hour. I'll take viewer ideas for ships, vehicles, or other machines, and when the timer starts, I have just 1 hour to design and build something that fits whatever specifications are set out for me. If I can't finish or the ship doesn't work as intended, it gets scuttled. Ships that do work will be published to the workshop for all to enjoy. Time to hop in and find out what we'll be doing this week in Ship of the Week. So this week we're going to be doing a suggestion, well, loosely a suggestion submitted by a Fred Veith on the first video, the sort of tour of Moe's Diner. His suggestion was to do a sort of mini version of the diner, to essentially be able to just have it by the ship. He had an idea of being able to magnetize it with like a landing gear is an option, mag plate is what I was thinking of. Do stuff like that. Basically a way to have all the stuff I need ready to go right by me. And I like that idea. I did kind of misread it the first time I read the comment, and it kind of got me onto something that's not quite that, but kind of interesting, I thought, just the same. So we're going to be doing a drop pod. This is going to be like the sort of vanilla survival start pod you get. This is going to be something that conceptually you would be able to drop in onto a world. It could be like an escape pod or something. And it will have everything you need to get started in survival. Kind of everything to go about what you need to do, get started, and all that jazz. So, yeah, let's hop on to it. So, our main goals for this, it needs to be able to provide kind of oxygen, hydrogen, power. It's going to need to have some way to hold me, preferably some way that's fairly safe. And to make it sort of fit the drop pod theme, I want it to be able to safely land on planets and moons. So I'll need to probably use parachutes, and I'll have to think of some thruster-based solution for the moon where you can't use parachutes. I do intend to also have it with some sort of mag plate or landing gear on the bottom. It's kind of similar again to the vanilla one, so I could slap it onto a build I'm doing out here. I could just have it floating in space. They're all kind of options. So, okay. We've got 1 hour on the clock. Let's roll. So, I'm going to need... let's get the basic functional stuff first. I'm going to need a survival kit, because that will be my main interface, and you need it to be able to build stuff. Going to one O2H2 generator. Tanks might be handy, but I think I'll leave them off for now. We'll need small conveyors, and I think I'm going to want to use... there we go. Use a big battery. I'm also, and this is going to be maybe slightly bold decision, I think I'm going to try and use a cryo chamber as the sort of main place for me to be, the sort of person housing. Mainly just because I think it makes a lot of sense to have like a drop pod that has, you could easily see this being part of some sort of escape pod machine. I want it to be fairly compact. Ideally it would be more compact than the vanilla one. Let's maybe just have some blocks so I can measure stuff out. The sun is not in an amazing place for this build. So we've got this. If I want maybe one block in the middle, then I want to try and match the slope. So I'd do that. Some of this stuff may be, this is kind of just me measuring it out. Yeah, so that's roughly... I mean, the lines aren't quite the same, but they're pretty similar. Now, unfortunately, this thing doesn't really line up perfectly with blocks, so I don't think I should focus too heavily on aesthetics. But that kind of gives me an idea. Maybe I'm going about this wrong. I think that is something we should just tack on the side. Let's start by getting something built with these. How I'm gonna do it, actually. Yeah, I'll just have these there. I may not have a need for all the conveyors, but I think it'll be better to have the option. So if we start out like this, get rid of that in the middle. So this is a good shape. I can access ice there. I can access whatever I build on the survival kit there. So this is going to be the big challenge here. This isn't an overly complex thing to design, but designing it in such a way that I can kind of... it's all about optimization. So if I were to slap that there... or heck, I could technically put it there and still access, but it gets kind of tight. Though the issue with this design... I'm going to need a parachute out the top, which means I'd have to do something there. Alright. Design take 3. So we'll lay those out on the sides. If I stick O2H2 there, I can mirror it with the battery here. So this is now fully functional for everything except for survival, which I could do like so. That may not be a bad sort of shape to work with. So you can access this port here to do hydrogen and oxygen bottles. You've got a battery available. You can access the survival kit to recharge at this. The downside is the large port on the survival kit isn't going to be very readily available. What can I... Let's just do a quick test. What's the largest thing I can produce on this? So the reason I'm testing this, if I cover this port up, I want to make sure that... Oh, that battery might already be dead. No, it's not. If I cover this port up, I want to make sure that the player... that you can still access anything produced in this, because if it's going to be a proper survival landing vehicle, that's kind of a requirement. You have to be able to access the survival kit. So... okay. So I can put everything in through that. Let me try, because I remember this used to work. I don't know. Oh, it still does. Okay. So you can do... Can you not produce power kits on these things? Could have sworn you could produce more than this. Strange. If you can access stuff through the terminal, despite the fact that it doesn't make a ton of sense, and it looks like you can, you should be able to get anything regardless of size out through the terminal. So I think this will work from that standpoint. Guess we shape. Actually, here's an idea. We don't need these to be aligned necessarily there. So now it's sort of a everything structure. Yeah, and this would be the middle. So that's good. Oh, one thing too. And this is something I've just kind of thought of. So, in order for this to be, I guess, as useful as the vanilla pod, I really need to provide it with all the parts you need for progression. Or at least all the parts that you would normally have on a survival pod, because when the certain tricks with progression, you grind down a bunch of the stuff off of the survival pod, and it gives you the ability to build some of this other stuff. It's got a battery. Now, grinding down and damaging the battery is kind of a pain, but you can do it. One doesn't have interior blocks. Landing gear is important. You'll have an O2H2 gen, which has 2 options, so it would unlock both. Small cargo, and you wouldn't have a solar panel. Okay. So it'll have landing gear,
Energy
or maybe a
low.
mag plate. Have an O2H2 then, so I need to add a small cargo container, maybe a light, to get you some of that stuff. Small cargo container. Gonna want a beacon. I think that'll be it. In terms of what I have to add that I've not been thinking of. Well, we can stick those in. Just right here. It's probably good to have a beacon on board, and then the small cargo container is not super useful, but it could be nice if you need some extra room to stick like ore to process, or stone to process, because you can't really do ore in these things. So we've got our parachute. We've got that. We've kind of got everything functionally you'd need. It's a little bit of a test now. I'm being able to recharge is kind of important. So I guess now we just need to figure out kind of how to shape it. Actually, I guess the next step would be to figure out some sort of moon-based landing mechanism. So the vanilla one, I believe how it does it, it actually has a small hydrogen thruster right in the bottom. Hi, yeah, pause that. So, Future Scott here. At the time, I'd not really done much playing around with or experimenting with moon-based survival, so I didn't actually know how it worked. I just kind of made a guess based on the physical lander pod, which does have a hydrogen thruster on the bottom. Uh, I've since tested it and learned that the real deal, it just spawns you like 5 feet off the ground, and it has wheels. So you just plop onto the ground on your wheels on the moon, everything's hunky-dory. So just carry that going forward. It may or may not hold bearing in our future endeavors. But yeah, so the real one does not do anything similar to what I'm trying to attempt. There might be a reason for that. All right, back to the show. And it uses that to kind of slow your descent enough to survive touchdown. So maybe that's something. So my idea here, we'll have these thrusters, and they'll be set to a very low override, and off by default. This sensor, as it comes down, this will detect voxel, which I believe you can do. Floating objects. Asteroids. Asteroids might do it. We'll have that so that it can hopefully detect the voxel surface of the moon, trigger the thrusters to do a quick suicide burn, and if I have the thrusters set enough, the burn will be just weak enough, it will slow the ship down, but the ship will still be falling. which means it can then land on some landing gear. Yeah, so it's a little grunty. I'm actually not disliking it too much. I'm kind of thinking that we can leave a lot of this stuff exposed. Just kind of touch it up with some covering armor here and there. What I may do is kind of a little something there just to cover the bottom. Maybe I'll bring it out just a bit. A little something just so that the survival kit isn't one of the first things to hit the ground. You've got your little landing legs. Got a parachute to dangle it down. Maybe do something like that just to cover there. Yeah, this is looking like something. So you've got your battery, got parachute, kind of got armor flowing, just kind of connecting, covering bits without really doing too much. Be fairly light. Can I maybe connect this in a better way? That's something, but maybe if we replace these, since we know how they kind of work now. Oh, dang it. No, I think that should be a normal pipe. Let's go ahead and... yeah, that side's reconnected. Do a normal curve there. Oh, and I got the curve in there. Dang it. Okay. Yeah, I think that works. Kind of looks like an egg, almost. A little drop egg. You are rather high up in this thing. Oops. Now, there's one thing I kind of wish is that, the small grid cryopod weren't quite so slanted. You can kind of make it work, but, it would be nice if there were other options or just like a flat flush option. It would be easier to blend into things. Okay. Just filled it up with ice, mainly because I'm about to die. This is a useful thing to be building, because I can use it to get my stuff back. I can definitely see the value here. Yeah, honestly. It's a little bulky and chunky, but I think it should work. Let's maybe adjust this a little bit. Right, so that's facing downward. So with sensors, the way they work, these are all kind of in relation to the sensor, and the front is coming out of the front of the sensor. So if you imagine there was a little camera in there, front would be looking straight out the camera. So front's what we're going to want. We're going to probably want it fairly high. Everything else can be quite low, or quite narrow. No longer need some detect players. That should be good. It'll only detect voxel. Hopefully that means it detects ground. If I'm right, the material that makes a planet in Space Engineers is identical to an asteroid. Planets are essentially just big asteroids with gravity and some other stuff. The landing thrusters are on now, and they should get enough hydrogen out of the O2H2 generator to operate. I think maybe what we'll do is we'll go ahead and put this in our clipboard. And actually, I think the range on that beacon's quite far. So we're going to go ahead and leave Mose, and I'm going to do the final work of this on the moon. So into spectator, and away we go. Here we are on the moon. So if I go ahead and do this, now how best to test this? For one thing, the gravity alignment, there we go, isn't ideal. So currently it's hovering on hydrogen, which is lovely. I guess the first thing to test... Yeah, that's blue. That means it's detected. If we go up a little bit... Still detecting. Up a little more. Now it's not. I don't have a great sense of what 50 meters high is. Now, the downside is you can see our speedometer that we're damped. It is slowly drifting into the moon, which isn't ideal. Now, one of the things that I planned for, this gyroscope, I want to set it to override and set everything, keep them at 0, 0, 0. In theory, that should keep the thing, as it falls from the sky, hopefully level to gravity. Now, that's going to be a pain to test here, because it won't necessarily start level to gravity, but we'll see what we can do. Unfortunately, this happens sometimes. I guess it's based on the orientation of the survival kit. Because the survival kit's the first block, its orientation is what dictates kind of the alignment when you do the align to gravity please thing. And because the align to gravity doesn't let you snap, why are the tooltips on? I didn't think that was normally there anymore. Yeah. So because it's not there, it's hard to get it perfectly, well, because there's not a 90-degree snap, it's kind of hard to get things perfectly aligned. So that looks pretty good. Okay. So the next thing to do then, I need to set this override so that we start falling. I should be dampened to it for this. But I want it to be a very slow descent. Nope, now we're going up. We're still going up. The challenge is there is a bit of a delay to what's happening. Okay, we're currently falling. Let's do 9,500. Still falling. Okay. This is going to be tough. Maybe the first step. Because part of this is... I'm basically trying to pre-program and sort of pre-automate what would normally be manually done or computer done actively. None of those words probably made sense. I'm sort of trying to clockwork an ICBM to make it all happen ahead of time without having any sort of ongoing active calculation. Because unfortunately, I don't believe I can do that. So, I think let's make quick GPS. And we'll go straight up 50 meters. So this is about the point where the sensor will go. Let's set the thrust to like there. Maybe not, because that causes it to just kind of go. So, okay. Our sensor is triggered. Maybe that's going to be the quickest way to do this. Come with me. So, essentially we're going to be playing Lunar Lander now. Let's turn off the thrusters. Unlock the landing gear to let it completely settle. So I'm going to have the sensor set up actions. I want it to turn on the thrusters. I want the thrusters by default off. And let's start at 10 kilonewtons of braking thrust. So this should be roughly level to gravity starting out. The gyroscope should keep it there. Is the sensor... The sensor's triggered now. So if I... Actually... shoot. Did it turn these on? No. Is it because it's out of fuel? No. This copy should be set up. I'm going to leave this one here as sort of the default, and we'll start testing. So in theory, if I go way up in the air, spawn this in. I forgot you can't go into third person here. Alright, we're writing it down live. Thrusters are off. Hopefully sensor will trigger. Yes, it has. Okay. We survived, but not quite intact. So that is not quite the right speed. Let's just kind of... I'm just going to do that again from the outside so we can better see what's going on. One thruster is on already. Shouldn't be the case. Okay, something's gone a little funkadelic. What are you doing? That's off. That's off. Oh! I'm a... Right. I remember. So, a thing with sensors, another thing. This spot here, this triggers when the sensor is triggered. This second spot triggers when the sensor is untriggered. So you can use that to set up an action so when something happens when you enter the range and then something happens when you leave. Putting the thrusters there, because one's off, it detects that the range is no longer detected and turns one on. That's what's happening. So I actually need a thrusters group. Oh, and the downside I just realized with this, these landing thrusters are going to have to... There's no way to differentiate between the moon and Earth. These landing thrusters aren't going to really work on Earth. Or rather, they will work, and that will cause problems because then it'll fly away. Well, that's something we'll have to test, I guess. Okay, we have 16 minutes 50 on the clock. This thing went together fairly quick, but the actual testing and fine-tuning is less than ideal. Setup actions. Alright. Well, this should give us a good test. We know we're at the right height, which is handy. No, no, no. So we'll follow it down. So it's going at a pretty good clip. And does not survive. Though to be fair, most of it actually has survived. It's just that landing gear that keeps getting killed. So that's not bad. But also doesn't really help us. Ideally, you don't want your landing pod exploding on landing. No, no, no. Let's try 30 kilonewtons. Let's double it and see. I guess I should go higher, because in theory, these things will be dropping from enough height to build up terminal velocity. I need it to have enough braking that it sort of suicide burns and survives that. I guess in theory, it's something we'll have to test, but in theory, the thrusters on Earth may not be an issue because they're set for the moon's gravity, and Earth has more gravity. Hope that ain't working. Oh, except now it's going up. Oh, that's another thing. I need to... If it doesn't lock to the ground, the thrusters will just kind of take off again. Oh, that means it needs to be timer based. Oh no. I may not have the time to do this. Where can we stick a timer? Yeah, that timer will turn on. Oh, we need 2 timers. Dang it. Okay. What are those? They're not a threat. Alright. Under here, sticking 2 timer blocks. Have them supported just a little bit. So, timer 1 turns on the thrust. It also starts timer 2. This one turns off the thrust. The first timer is what we trigger here. So as this drops, it will do a little burn and slow the pod down. Now let's try 50 kilonewtons. That's half power for the thrusters. We'll see for 10 seconds and we'll see where we go. We won't be going very fast. But this should give us some indication. Okay.
Your health is low.
Right. So, at the speed... Dang, if we're coming in at full speed, I need it to be... I think these thrusters, they just need to go all in. I probably only have enough time for like a 3-second burn. Hmm. I'm debating now. I guess this is kind of rewriting the rules as I'm going. Technically, this whole building the thing and having it be a droppable survival pod was not part of the original idea. Was not part of what I was proposed in the comment. So I may... If this doesn't work, it may be a thing where I just kind of scratch that off the list and accept that it's not a full success. I don't know about that. Because if I can't get this kind of keyed in right within the time limit, I mean, based on the rules, that's a failure. Part of it's just that the sensor doesn't really go out very far. Okay, we're going quite fast. No. I don't believe it survived. Nope. Huh. Okay. Well, here's a new idea. Let's just one last ditch effort. Those aren't in a great spot. Let's try making this thing with 6 thrusters. At full burn for the 3 seconds. I need a new spot for my timers. Which I guess could go, you know, where these landing gear are. Unfortunately, that's gonna happen. Yeah, 50 meters. I believe a sensor on large grid. No, it can also only go up to 50 meters, so this is the best I've got. Alright. Let's go up and see what we can do. We're kind of on the edge of lunar gravity, so this should give us pretty much the full speed that we'd be coming down at normally. 65. Okay, sensor should be going soon. Yes. Ah. It did well, didn't do as good the second time. But it did mostly survive that. Okay, we've only got 3 minutes and 50 seconds now. Got time for one more test. Right, let's set this down to like 2 seconds. I forgot to do that last time. All the thrusters are at... Here's an idea. Okay. No thrust override. So, without a thrust override, the thrusters should try and inertial damp the ship. Maybe let's do a quick test of that just to make sure this works. But thrusters can fire with more power when they're inertial dampening than they have when they just have an override on. Okay. Now, we didn't fall from much height that time, but we did survive that. And at least, oh, darn it, at least 2 of them did fire. Now, why didn't the rest seem to go on? Because I apparently didn't do that. That may mean we may not have been using our 6 thrusters at all. Okay. One more test. Let's see what we can do. So this should use all 6 thrusters. And instead of having an override, they should just try an inertial dampen. Which should give us both the speed and the whatnots. Let's just do it. And we just have to hope that they fire, or essentially that we're going fast enough that they don't fire, stop us, and then we accelerate again, because that could cause damage. 50 meters a second. I hope we aren't about to crash on the tower, because that'll harm the testing. Okay, here we go. I don't even know if the thruster's turned on then. We lost one of the timers. Does the other timer... Yeah, it says they were on. Oh. And that's the timer. 1 hour is up. Oh, I guess there are only 2 thrusters showing because only 2 of them survived. Dang. Well, I don't know how this is gonna go, but I guess it's time for testing. I'll have to make the hard decision. Alright, well, off we go. Okay, so our drop pod. I'm dubious about if it'll function as needed, but I suppose the first tests are fairly forgiving, so we'll just go ahead and copy one. I have an in-progress ship here. I'd really like some convenient spot to refuel and recharge everything. So, I guess the first step, we'll just place that there, stop it because it's moving. There we go. Actually, no, because part of the original idea was to see if I could clamp it onto something. So here's the part that's finished. We're working over here. Can I successfully kind of clamp it on? So that's there. Give it a little push. A little more of a push. There we go. So there's now a nice convenient spot right here. I could be, there are tubes. Yeah, I could be building tubes over here. Just having a grand old time. Then, oh, hold on. And whoops, I've hurt myself. No problem, I'm right back where I started. I don't have to go through anything. Right back here. If I, doing all manner of welding and whatnot with all my lights on. It needs some power. I can quickly go up, repower myself. I'd say this works pretty well. Has ice in it, I can get oxygen and hydrogen as needed. Keep myself healthy and powered. Yeah. Okay, so that's test 1 done. With a pass. So, I guess for test 2, could look at my floating body. Test 2, I think we go down to, or go to the outskirts of Earth's gravity. From there, we'll test and see if it can work as an Earth survival pod. So, as you can see, we're just in Earth's gravity. We're also above mountains, which might be a little too harsh of a test, but, I mean, we gotta test these things in tough situations. So, let's pop it in. Hop in there. And then ride it down. We'll see if the parachute, which I've just remembered doesn't have any parachutes in it, works. Do I count forgetting to load it with a parachute? I'd say no. I think I'm allowed to load it with a parachute, because, I mean, it was intended in the design. It's not like I forgot to put parachutes on. It just didn't have any parachutes in it. So, we'll do that too. Again, maybe that should have been done before. This is already skirting the line, so we'll have to make a final judgment, but we'll see what happens. Okay. There's now, I can just see a corner of space up in the far left, but that's quickly dwindling. We are coming in. 70 gravity, or 0.7 G. Now, well, it doesn't really matter because we're already at terminal velocity. Depending on how high these mountains are, I may end up that there may not be much room in between 1G and ground. Looks like we're about to hit it. Yep, that's 1G. Okay. So we're at full speed. We are coming down on the side of this mountain, which will probably mean we're going to tumble a bit. That's another test, is we need to be able to survive that tumbling, even if we don't lock eventually. Oh. Okay, that's a parachute. We can't see it from our position, but we can sure feel it. We're now coming down level at a fairly slow speed. That would be the thrusters. That did more or less fully stop us. But it feels like we still have a parachute. Okay. And... ooh, that didn't sound good. We're moving, we're rolling. I think the landing gear may have exploded. Oh. We've kind of landed in this trench. I think we're wedged. Oh, ish. Okay. We still have a parachute. That's helping a bit. Yeah, I think it's gonna... Yep, that's caught it. Okay. So, one thruster was damaged and we lost both landing gear. Coming down. The thrusters did fire and slow us down, which is good. I think part of it is they had enough time to, because we were able to stop. We were going slow enough with the parachutes. Well, if I told you this was how you were going to be coming down to the planet, and this was the expected result, I don't think we'd call that a success. Personally. It's not a complete failure. It did get us down safely. And maybe on certain terrain it would be better than others. I mean, the normal pod has issues where, like, if a normal pod landed on terrain like this, it would have tumbled and probably taken some damage. So I'd say it's a partial failure, partial success. I guess our next test and our final test is to head back up to the moon and see what happens there. I would say if it survives intact enough to be a game start. So this one, I've got the hydrogen or the O2H2 generator, I've got the battery, and I've got the survival kit. That's all, and I've got my cryopod. If those 4 things survive a landing on the moon, I think I'll call this ship a success. If not, well, we know what'll happen. Alright, to the moon. Okay. Now, this'll be a little bit more hairy, just because, if nothing else, we don't have the safety of the parachute. It's only on those thrusters, and they partially rely on me being aligned. I guess I could have put thrusters in, like, maybe not one pointing downwards, but, you know, in the side directions too, that would kind of basically turn on and kind of hold position. That may have been smart. I am curious, and part of my idea here, if it were successful, I may still try it. I may look into how to create a survival pod mod, because you can mod and essentially change the blueprint. Actually, I shouldn't be talking. I think we're about to be... Yeah, we're about to be in something. Okay. Well, that wasn't very much slowdown time. We are on the ground, though. We don't have an H2 tank or an O2H2 generator, but we do have the survival kit and the battery. See, but we'd now be in a situation. We do have the ice. We can hold it all. We would have to try and produce the parts we need to build a new O2H2 gen. Let me just see what parts you need for that. Because if I can rebuild it by mining some quick dirt, so I need steel plate. I don't have the ability to look at things based on blocks. I guess this is another test, is to see if it's actually working as a survival thing, I need to be able to build stuff, so this is good to do anyway. Produce one of those. I can pull it out through there, which should mean I can pull anything out. Take my O2H2 gen. It needs large steel tubes. Which I can't produce on this. In fact, I can't produce any tubes. So, yes, you could get started, but you're not going to be able to... One, I mean, had I landed on the other side, the battery would be gone. And that's not going to work regardless. You're not going to be able to repair enough of it. I guess I could start grinding down bits, but again, considering that was pretty much an optimal landing, I don't think there's much point. Unfortunately, I mean, it works for part of it, and I don't think it's a total failure. I think I may have to declare this one right off. Well, it was a good try. I mean, I think it worked functionally. Not great. It did what it was sort of designed to do in space, it just wasn't a good lander. Unfortunately, I don't quite know how to make that happen. So, with that, bye-bye, little pod. Ah, we hardly knew ye. Well, that's that. Again, I couldn't figure it out in an hour. That's no reason to say this couldn't work. I'd say it was fairly close to working. It just needed a better way to stop itself. Really, the main Achilles heel was that the sensor for the thrusters doesn't reach out far enough, so when you're traveling at speed, by the time it triggers and actually turns stuff on, you're already in the ground. So, that's just kind of the situation. You may be able to do better. You could probably do it with scripting and make it all work. I bet you there's some mechanism to do it with a, however you mod the default one, because I believe the Moondrop pod, it lands on wheels because it's a rover versus a parachutey thing, but I think it does use the little hydrogen thruster to bring it down, or at least to slow its descent. Maybe wheels would have been good. Either way, I couldn't do it in the hour I tried. Maybe you'll be able to do it. Feel free to try on your own and see what you can do. Post it to the workshop if it works. Could be cool. So yeah, thank you everybody so much for watching. Feel free to check out any of the other stuff I've done. There'll be more of this coming next week. So until then, bye bye.